right, it's time for our next speaker. We're going to crack on with Phillip Lockewood Holmes. You'll see on the program he's self-described as a man of leisure. He's being ironic there because, as you'll see, it's quite the opposite. He's very much not a man of leisure. He's worked at an agency for, 20 years, which means he knows where the bodies are buried, and he can spill the beans. He no longer has to worry about offending anyone. So I, for one, am very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Can you please give a big welcome to Phillip Lockewood Holmes?
Hey everyone. So Dan is a tough act to follow, isn't he? So I get the honour of following Dan, and my clicker isn't working either. So, all right, let's see. Will it work? No, they're working on it. Cool. I'll open some water and we'll see what happens. It's a big moment. Will he open it successfully or not? Boom. So my first slide, if it appears, was literally just to say thank you. So thank you to Andy for inviting me to speak today, and thank you for giving me a bit of time. My second slide is a beautiful picture. You can imagine it, right? Yeah. It's like Mid-Journey. So yeah, we'll get Mid-Journey. You used your own minds to invent it. It's a beautiful picture of a lake. Someone sat there looking out, pondering, thinking about, reflecting. And that's what I'm hoping this time is for you all, is basically I'm going to talk a bit about my experience of leading teams and how I think we can create the context to get the best out of our teams. Particularly if we want to design and build something that has a huge impact, then that team is going to be bigger, it's going to be more complicated, it's going to be multidisciplinary, people are going to come at things from different perspectives. How do we get everyone aligned so that we can go further, so that we can have the impact that we want with our products? So I was going to share some stuff based on my experience, but mainly it's a time for you to reflect on how you lead, the context of people that you work for or work with, and how you think you can go further together. They're still trying to find the deck. So the next thing I have on the next slide is two pictures of two books. So the first book is by a guy called Daniel Pink. It's sold 2 million copies. It's called Drive. And I found it a really useful book because it was the kind of book where you read it and go, yeah, obs. That's what I thought already, but it helped me really go, actually, that is what I believe, and it gave a bit of structure to how I think we create a great context for our team. The second book is one that we created within the agency that I used to run and lead. So, as mentioned, I worked at the same agency for 20 years. I joined as a developer. I started doing a bit of UX, client leadership. I then was part of a management buyout from the founders. I then owned and ran the agency. We grew it. We were about 70 people here in Edinburgh. We won, yay! We became Scottish Design Agency of the Year a few times. We had various clients. And then we joined a really large group. And so at one point, about 10 years ago, we created a book. Oh yeah, look, sit back, time to reflect. Look at that. These are the two books. Thank you, tech team. We got there. So yeah, Daniel Pink. And then we created this, the U Rulebook, and we gave this to every member of our team. So it was a team effort creating this book. There were like 3 of us. But I've got a few grabs from that because it kind of sums up some of our kind of leadership ethos. That was me when I was young. That was me now-ish. So yeah, I'm going to talk to those 2 books and then the experience I've had of leading multidisciplinary teams on clients, but then also running the agency. And this is me with my ironic man of leisure. I find resting very difficult. I'm up to coming up with a new startup idea and various other things at the moment. But it does mean that I don't work for an agency. I don't have any clients. No one pays me. So when it comes to Q&A, I can give you any answer you want. So this is just to go, some of you are leaders in terms of, you've got a team who report to you, but just the context of we all create the context of leadership, right? So Leif Erikson, I hope he said this. It's unclear because it won't have been recorded because he's from about 800 years ago. He was a Norwegian explorer, probably discovered North America before Columbus. So we are all leaders whether we want to be or not. There is always someone we are influencing, either leading them to good or away from good. And I believe that. We all shape the context we're in. It was actually only in my 30s, I think, I realized that my slightly dysfunctional family I grew up in, as the eldest child, I probably set up some of that dysfunctionality, right? It wasn't all my parents' fault. It was also partly my fault. We all create the context we're in. We all influence it with our energies, with how we lead. So this is for everyone. And so, yeah, do reflect. And in terms of the title for the talk I came up with, if you want to go fast, go alone. I like doing stuff alone. I like getting somewhere fast, but you don't get a long way, right? If you want to go far, go together. I got pulled into the internet, into the source of this quote. It's allegedly an African quote, but then someone looked into it and it probably wasn't. So no one knows where it came from, but I think it's a really good phrase, right? If you want to create real impact in the world, you've got to have a team. You've got to have people who are different to you. You've got to have all of that. And I'm sure all of us work in multidisciplinary teams. And that means there are some people who are more like you and some people who aren't. How do you get everyone to come together and create great work? Okay, so if you remember anything from my talk, this is it, which is actions are all that matter. Forget mission, forget vision, forget values, forget strategies, forget contracts, forget all that stuff. How you behave is everything. Now, based on the size of your organization, if I'd heard, that question about working at a smaller agency, it's probably a smaller size. You don't have a larger organization behavior to kind of influence it. It's probably how you behave with your team. But within whatever organization you're in, it's what you actually do that matters and creates the context for success. So particularly within bigger organizations, sadly, how they act and what they say they're aiming to do don't necessarily line up. So I was chatting to one of the other speakers, I won't name which one, but they work for a really big organization, and they said, something like, unfortunately, it doesn't really mean that. So, sometimes big organizations say they really care about their customers or the craft of a product. We want it to be the most excellent thing ever, but then the actions are we have to ship it when it's not ready and it's a bit broken. So that's a behavior that isn't actually evidencing what the mission is. So that's why I say all of those things are irrelevant. It's around the actual actions you take when you lead your team and the actions of an organization that really shape what's important to them. So when you're acting, think about what really, really matters. And then, if you can remember more than one thing, this is the other thing to remember. So this is from Daniel Pink. And he, in the book, got to a point whereby he said, these are the 3 things you need to give anyone that works successfully within an organization. And they're really obvious things, right? Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. So purpose, Dan just said at the end there about organizations where it's more than just profit, it's about people and it's about planet. He then used the word purpose as well at the end there. And I think more and more and more to keep and attract and have the best people in your team, people are seeking that purpose that is more than just getting a good salary. They want to make an impact. We've got the climate emergency. We've got things that we need to fix with the world, right? It's not great. We need organizations that are working at the double bottom line, purpose and profit. And even if you don't have that lofty goal, people having a real sense that we're all in this one thing together and it's worth doing is crucial for having people motivated, working hard and getting somewhere. So number 1, purpose. Secondly, autonomy. Your team members are probably smarter than you. If they're not, fire them and get people who are smarter than you, and then make them have the opportunities to make decisions based on the fact they're going to know the information and what they're doing more than you are. So firstly, show them where we're heading. Also be prepared to change that if they're clever and go, well, what about there? And you go, yeah, you're right, let's go there. Secondly, autonomy. And then third, mastery. Now, we're really, really fortunate in our industry in terms of creating products that on the whole, we are creating something. And therefore, intrinsically, for most of us, our role will involve making something. And therefore, there's a mastery around getting better as a developer, as a UXer, as a designer, as a product owner, all the different roles that we have. We're always going to be trying to create something, and therefore there's a sense that we can get better at and we can master it. And we're really fortunate about that, because in lots of jobs, you don't necessarily have that element of mastery. You're doing the same thing every day, or you're not creating. But really relish that mastery. Celebrate craft, celebrate within your team excellence and growing and getting better, because those three things give everyone a sense of direction, fulfillment, and joy. So they're my 2 tips. Behave the way you want to, and secondly, then focus on giving everyone in your team purpose, autonomy, and mastery. So in the rest of the time I have, I was going to talk about this little scientific experiment. Has anyone come across the candle experiment before? Anyone read about this? Okay, so this was, I like things that are backed up by a bit of science and an experiment, like Dan showed one earlier, right? Some academic stuff. So this was, I think, in the 60s or 70s, whereby experimenters were looking at kind of problem solving. And so different people were given the same test, but in slightly different setups. So in both occasions, in both scenarios, people were asked to attach the candle to the wall and light it. That was the task, right? So if you're presented with the one on the left, you have to think a little bit laterally. If you're put this one on the right, then the solution is a little bit more obvious, and hopefully you figured it out. But that's the solution. You tack the box to the wall, you put the candle in the box, you light the candle. Okay, so that's the solution. Requires more lateral thinking if you're presented that, because you have to empty the tacks from the box. And if you're given that one, it's more obvious. So the interesting thing, and why I've put this in the slide, is that people then tested incentive schemes. So they got a whole load of people in to do it, and they timed roughly how long it took. And then they brought in a whole new set of people who didn't know the problem, and they told them that they were going to reward them the faster they got the task done. What happened? So when it was more obvious what needed to happen, people were quicker when they were paid to be quicker. So when they could see the solution, they rushed around and made it happen. When lateral thinking was required here on the left, they were slower, because the pressure of paying for performance reduced lateral thinking. So the reason I'm sharing this is because I've had a strong belief for a long time, and there's someone in the audience who used to work for me and therefore knows that I never paid a bonus. And I never paid a bonus, not because I was a tight-flinted bastard. I thought it was better to share the money around than just be on performance, but it's because bonuses on performance do not motivate lateral thinking. They limit lateral thinking. And that, for me, is why mastery, a focus on mastery, is more important. You focus on doing good work. It's like focus on the process of getting better, and you will get better, and your results will improve. Don't focus on rewarding short-termism. So that's why I put this example in, and it's backed by actual academic research. In terms of that purpose, it doesn't have to be highfalutin. So the agency I ran, we were doing some work for the Scottish Government. We were doing some nice work that had purpose to it, but not all our work did. And so our purpose was a simple, this is the old Anthony Burrell poster. Many of you have probably seen it. It was a bit of our agency motto, work hard and be nice to people. That was our ethos. We created a great team culture where people did work hard and we were nice to each other. And it doesn't have to be too complicated, but you do have to act it. So much like I said earlier, if you come up with some amazing mission statement, but then you all behave like bastards, it doesn't work. You've got to actually line those things up. Number 2 is to do with the growth mindset. I won't talk about it, but I think it's Caroline Dweck did a lot of research with school kids about using the growth mindset. So that's around kind of encouraging to do better and keep working rather than just say, you're amazing, and then they stop trying. Lots of stuff you can read on that. And we phrase this as don't believe the hype. Don't believe you're good. Believe you can be better. And that encourages us to keep trying, improving, and getting better. And that creates a team that I think all learns and works and grows together. All for one and one for all. Kind of 2 points in this. Firstly, no one's going to try something new. No one's going to try and think laterally if you get bollocks for cocking up, right? You've got to go out your comfort zone, and sometimes that's not going to be pretty. And therefore, within our book, we talked about mistakes happens, we all screw up, we've got your back. Because actually, you need to give people the freedom to mess up, because then they're going to try. So there's that. Also, I wanted to talk about valuing each other. So a lot of the time, I've experienced that within multidisciplinary teams, the friction comes when people think somebody else is being a bit slack or not very good at what they do. And on the whole, that's because they don't understand what they're doing. So, the frustration of the development team are really slow and it looks shit because they're actually focusing on the functionality, not on what it looks like, and they're trying to get that sorted. All of these things, it's around valuing what people are motivated by, understanding them and getting to know them better. So yeah, always think the best of others and try and learn from each other in a team. And then my final point, this was the last page of our book, was be you. Each of us is a different leader. Each of us is different, but each of us is great because of it. So lean into what it is you're great at. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. And ask yourselves, are you making a contribution? Are you open to learning? Are you working for the team? And are you fun to work with? Just be fun and nice. The thing I was supposed to say at the start, because I missed this slide, is I was going to keep it simple today, because I think the simple things we sometimes forget in complexity. So you've probably all got some kind of guide and team handbook and full of shit that's really, really long. My key message is keep it simple, just be nice, work hard, and appreciate other people for who they are. And perspective. I think perspective, I don't know if you know the phrase being the non-anxious person in the room. Yeah? Did we know that phrase? How often do you go into a meeting and it's full of anxious people who are not fun to be around? Try and be a non-anxious person. It makes the world a lot easier. Gareth Southgate, I think this was the day before the final between England and France. We all know how it went for England. Not great. But the day before, he gave this to the press. I would think the sun will come up tomorrow and life will be the same, whatever happens. Now, the guy cares, right? He's a great leader. It wasn't that he wasn't trying his absolute best to win, but he has a sense of perspective that liberates his team. So yeah, they're my little tips for leading. Thank you for bearing with me. And hopefully we've got a bit of time. Yes, we do. Look at that. 3 seconds to spare on 15 minutes. Yes, so we've got a bit of time for questions. Thanks, everyone.
Great, yeah, I hope we've got some questions. I was really glad to see the emphasis you put on actions.
Yep.
Over, vision statements, strategies, all that kind of stuff. Basically actions over intentions.
Yep.
We heard from Dan about, people working in a for-profit healthcare system with the best of intentions. It is the actions that matter. So might I point out some hypocrisy?
Please.
In you're extolling the virtue of work hard and be nice to people. Now, be nice to people, no argument from me. How is working hard a positive thing?
So I think it's interesting because the co-managing partner that I ran the agency with, we used to butt our heads up against each other in the early days because he was an absolute work hard, workaholic, very long hours. And I was, there's no point. Like, I used an analogy once about someone like carrying a stone up a hill. Like, it's really, really hard work, but you could have put it on a forklift and been there really quick. So absolutely, there's a work smart part. You shouldn't just bust your nuts, but ultimately, I think if you work hard and you work smart, you're going to get somewhere further than if you just think and don't action. So yeah, there is a balance. Work hard needs to encompass being smart and thinking about efficiencies and all those things. But I think it's an ethos of just like, rolling your sleeves up and making things happen.
It's a very old-fashioned Protestant European Lutheran kind of
work hard,
ethos, isn't it? Yeah. And surely what matters is the actions. What matters is the output, what gets done.
But intention, it's a good challenge. But and maybe I am just a good old Protestant work hard kind of guy. Maybe that's why Man of Leisure for me is so funny. I don't have a job right now, but I am turning up to my work from home office space at 9 o'clock every day, making things happen, trying to make things, maybe that's just me. But I think that you've just got to make the most out of life. And for me, that is working hard, playing hard, grabbing opportunities, having experiences. It's just get it all. Right? And I think, working hard is part of making it happen. I mean, be lazy is not a good attribute, right? So I think being smart, applying yourself, making the most of your talents, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're great at, put your energy into it. I think that's the point.
I think you're confusing the input and the output. I totally agree that making things is a good thing. Making good things is a good thing. Now, a lot of time to make a good thing, you have to work hard. But you don't want to necessarily confuse the act of working hard with making good things. Otherwise, you end up rolling that stone up the hill.
Yeah, good strategy, put the effort into a good strategy, I agree. Working hard at a bad strategy gets you nowhere.
Fair enough. How about questions from the audience? Let's see who's got questions.
Is that all you managed to come up with?
No,
I thought there'd be more holes than that.
I've got plenty, but I don't want to hog the conversation. So I want to make sure if other people, okay, we've got a question here.
Cheers. Thanks for the talk. How firm were you with that sort of manual then? So the team that you had, if someone didn't match those attributes, how strict were you? How did you handle that, basically?
Yeah, so I think that obviously hiring is crucial. And I think the longer I worked in the agency, the more I realized that when I started out, I was a real snob academically. I was like, you hire people with first-class degrees because they're smart, and smart people will get you further. And by the end, I was like, mindset, character, approach is everything, because capability you can learn. And therefore, you know, that fit was really important. And we made some mistakes, for sure, in terms of some people we hired. And I think we got better at making sure we were really tight on 3-month trial periods, with making sure that people who had the right culture, we had a real good program of kind of interns, and that was a really good way of getting a sense, and then you'd keep people who you felt kind of culturally fitted. I mean, I think the risk is that also you don't want to make sure that you create too amorphous a culture. You know, you also do want to have people, you need the right ethos, but you want a variety of backgrounds and approaches. So, yeah. I think, Jamie, how did we do at that, do you think?
Yeah, we hired for like how people would fit in the team, and yeah, I think we matched that ethos of skills and everything could be taught. You know, you could learn software, you can learn ways of thinking, but if you're an asshole, we don't want you.
Yeah.
My alarm bells are ringing when you say if you hire for how well people will fit the team. Sounds like you're saying a culture fit.
Yep.
Ooh. Culture fit, I mean, maybe I would have used that term 10 years ago, but having seen how it's been weaponized, I mean, hiring people who look like you.
So you said culture fit. So the ethos of the business, in terms of the spirit, yes. And that's why I talked about you don't want to become too amorphous in terms of hiring people the same as you. But in terms of similar mindsets, wanting to achieve the same things, all of that was really important to us.
Okay, so people who are like you in some ways, but not like you in other ways.
Want to do and work in the same way, or through becoming an intern, get the ethos and want to be part of it.
Okay.
But you do want absolutely a range of backgrounds, of contexts, of everything to come in. And, you know, Edinburgh is a challenging city from that. We're very white and not very diverse. So that was something in the last 5 years or so we had to work really, really hard at, making sure that we had a broader set of backgrounds and more energy from different perspectives than we had traditionally had here in Edinburgh.
Okay. Other questions? Oh, we've got another one right here again.
I have a question about mastering something. So in the industry, there are so many tools that emerging, I don't know, like each day, and then you have a tool to help you document things, and then there is another tool to help you simplify this document things, and so on and so on. So how would you keep people kind of engaged, motivated to learn these kind of new tools? Because it's a bit tiring, especially like if you don't give them bonuses or anything.
Okay, so I'll answer the second part. So my point is that if you're motivating people with money, then someone else can just give them more money. And they're not working for you for the right reasons, right? So if someone's out to make more money, then you don't work at a creative agency anyway, right? So your proposition, your employee proposition is, why should someone want to work where you want to hire them, right? So for us, we tried to, yes, we wanted to try and pay people enough, but that was part of a mix of culture of the kind of work we did, of all the other things. And therefore, in terms of mastery, it's around mastering the toolkit, but more than that, the mastery of creating great outputs that delivered for our clients. So part of the autonomy would be, there were some processes and systems we had as an agency, but then there was a lot of freedom for people to go and choose what they felt was the right way to do their task. So, mastery of output, crafting of getting better, delivering better results, testing with users better, all those things. But if someone uses testing.com or another testing platform, whatever, it's like pick the tool that you think is the one you can control. And it was more on output and quality than it was on prescription of tools.
So mastery, autonomy, purpose. Is this kind of like good, fast, cheap? Like you can pick two, but can you really have all three? I mean, let's say you're working on making Uber for dogs. I get how you could, get your mastery, getting better at your craft, and autonomy, if it's the culture where you get to make decisions, great. But are you really going to find purpose making Uber for dogs? Like, do you need that if you got the other two?
Yeah. If you want people to be really excited and motivated and do a great product, then I think they need to believe in, either that the product of creating the Uber for dogs isn't really the important thing, but there's a community that they all belong to, or they support each other, or there's another reason why. What's that purpose? What's that reason for that group working together well? But the most obvious thing would be that they are dog lovers who really believe that there's a need for Uber for dogs. So you would hire dog lovers who were passionate about that, and you would build a community of people who really cared about that product and audience, and that would bond them together to create a better product that would beat someone who had just been paid some money to create Uber for dogs.
And is this something you extend beyond the workplace to life in general, that you feel like you need to have a purpose in life?
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone knows James Acaster, the comedian. Yeah, so he's got a book about I think a year in music or something like that, and there's one part where he ends a chapter and he says, you can take the boy out of the church, but you can't take the search for purpose and meaning out of the boy. My dad was a vicar. You can't take the search for purpose and meaning out of me. So therefore, I need to know that what I'm doing has a purpose and something bigger.
Good for you, but does it scale to the entire planet? 9 billion people? Literally everyone's supposed. Because
yes, it does. We all have an intrinsic value and a reason for what we believe in, and lots of people sell themselves short on doing something for money or doing something because of context. But I believe you are happier when what you do aligns with your values and what you think you're here on earth to do. And I think if people don't have a sense of what they're here on earth to do, and there's a misalignment, and they're going to fill that with something that is ultimately not going to make them as satisfied.
That just sounds like taking the consumerist argument and turning it on its head. You're not happy unless you own the latest gadget. Just taking that and saying, you're not happy unless you found your purpose.
I believe ultimately consumerism is filling a gap in people's lives when
like
they
purpose.
don't really know what they're about.
But purpose is different somehow.
Why?
You're saying, according to you, you're saying filling your life with purpose, good. Filling your life with gadgets, bad?
No, not filling it with purpose. Having what you do align with what you believe is your purpose or your values, I believe creates well-being.
Okay. But I don't think everyone needs to have a purpose. And I think it just creates anxiety by implying that everyone needs to have it. There's a great blog post by Winnie Lim called Leading a Purposeless Life that I encourage you to read. We've got a question here, if I could get a microphone just over here.
Do you think to be able to afford living the purpose that you feel, does that require a certain level of privilege?
Great question. Probably, yes.
What about compromise? We're like, well, I'll go to work at this terrible company to make money that I'll, use effectively in my altruism.
Yep, that's
wow.
we all find our balance.
Okay.
We all find the way that we connect it together.
Okay, because what I was hoping you wouldn't say that. I was basically quoting the tenet of what's called the effective altruism movement, which sounds great on paper, and it's just nasty, this idea that, you can basically wave away any short-term evil because how you will long-term do good by spending that money you earned in that nasty job. You're okay with that for the long-term perspective?
So I think the ideal is where you can line everything up, but that isn't always available. So I am also a pragmatist.
Would you rather somebody, flips burgers or goes to work at a petrochemical company but then uses that money to do good in the world?
I think you're asking me to make moralistic judgments on others.
I think there was quite a bit of moralistic judgment already. It's kind of the whole talk was moralistic judgment. How to run an agency, how to hire people.
So that was my view on how I did it and how I believe that I would like to do it, and I shared that with others. But I said at the start, this is for people to reflect on what they take from it for their own leadership style. I'm not saying that that is what everyone should do.
Okay.
So I'm sharing.
Thank you for sharing. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Great.